Hi, ambitious women, and welcome to Training Tuesday. Tonight we're talking about queen bees. We're talking about those women in the work environment who bully other women. And I'm going to warn you right up front, this might go a little longer. Normally we try to keep these under 30 minutes or to about 30 minutes, and this might go a little bit longer than that. So I just want to warn you, if you're joining me live and then you have to drop off right at 6:30, I get it. It's fine. But this is a pretty rich topic. There's a bit to say on it. So I'm just going to warn you up front that we may be going a little longer tonight. So if you can stick with me, please do. But I wanted to talk about this topic of women bullying women because it's come up a few times actually in the past week, and just most recently it came up with a close friend of mine who's not directly in the situation, but she's observing a situation where bullying is going on between grown women at the workplace. And I thought, given my own experience with this, given the experience that I know my clients have had with this topic, and the fact that it's almost the fact that the more that women are in the workplace and the more that women are getting up to the higher ranks in the workplace, the more this is a problem. And the thing is, when you look at the recent studies, this problem is increasing rather than decreasing. Men bullying women is decreasing, whereas women bullying women is increasing. And so, as we get started today, hold on here. I've got my other screen here where I am trying to make sure that I can monitor the chat and everything that's going on. So bear with me. I have my second screen over here so that if you comment, talk to me, which I always love for you guys to do, that I can follow the comments because they don't always show up in my Facebook Live feed. So we're going to get started talking about queen bees, how women bully other women in the work environment, what it looks like, the impact that it has. We're going to talk a little bit about what you can do about it. And there's not an easy fix, there's not a quick fix, and the main thing is that you're not doing anything wrong, which is oftentimes what we take on ourselves. What we carry is that somehow if we behaved a different way, we could get this other person to stop. And most of the time, truthfully, it's not how it works out. So, before we dive into queen bees, my name is Natalie Hahn. I am CEO of Dirty Girls Consulting, and I am very thrilled to have you guys here tonight for this topic. I feel like this topic is incredibly important for how we navigate work environments now that there are more and more women in it. We are here at Training Tuesday, and we are here every Tuesday to talk through issues and challenges and ideas and anything that helps us as women navigate the work environment, navigate work-life balance, feel stronger, feel more confident, be able to do more. So I'm inviting you to say hello, tell us where you're joining from, say hi in the chat. There's Christine. Hi, Christine. Say hi in the chat, tell me where you're from, and join in this conversation. The reason why I started off tonight saying that tonight might go a little bit longer than our normal 30 minutes is because there's potentially a lot to say on this topic. And so if you all have had experience being bullied or being the bully, it happens, right, in the work environment, I would love for you to share your comments and your stories as well, and not just have it be me chatting up here and talking at you. So we've got Sue and Jackie. Hey, Jackie, so I apologize for those of you last Tuesday. I did not make Training Tuesday. My apologies for that. Let's just say coming off the holiday weekend, there was something I ate and I needed downtime. So Aisha's here too, and Jill. Excellent. Great to see you guys. So let's talk about the queen bees. And I want to start by sharing the reason why this topic is so important to me is in my career, I've had bullies for bosses. But to be honest, the worst bully I ever had was a woman. And it shocked me because until that point in my career, I had been bullied by women at work, but I'd been bullied by men too, and I hadn't thought a ton about the difference. The women I got bullied by at work were not my direct bosses. But in one of my corporate roles, I was reporting to the CEO, and the CEO was a woman. And she started with, and this is very typical of bosses, of female bosses or female peers or bosses who were bullies. She started with the girlfriend tactic. Like, we were going to get along just fine and we were going to be girlfriends. And I had moved for this job. I'd moved from a different state to this job, so I was new in town. So she was sharing with me resources, right? Of, here's a real estate agent, and here's where you can go, here's where you should do your banking, and here's where you should do this, right? And you're going to find so many girlfriends here. This is such a great place. So she started with the girlfriend ploy of, she's going to be supportive and we're going to be pals and all that good stuff. But very quickly, as I got into my role, it shifted, and suddenly we weren't friends and friendly anymore. She wasn't asking me about my move or my son and how things were going and stuff like that. Suddenly, not even suddenly, I guess, just kind of, we evolved into, I would attend meetings, and in the meetings in front of the executive team, we had these executive team meetings every week. But in front of them, she would suddenly start picking apart something that I was presenting or something that I said, and throwing tantrums, literally throwing tantrums, where she would stand there in front of the room of all the executives and say, I'm the CEO, and you should just have done this way. And it didn't matter that we had just talked 2 days before about why I was doing it a different way. So she would throw that CEO card on the table in huff. She would, and this happened all, like every week when she and I met one-on-one every week, and we met in these executive meetings, she would change my goals. So 1 minute I would have to be doing this to achieve a certain level of success. Right here was my goal. And then the next week when I'm presenting my progress, suddenly I have a different goal I'm supposed to hit. So like I felt like I could never quite catch up with what was I supposed to be doing and how was I going to be successful here. She would ignore me at events. So I was running marketing, and part of my job in marketing was running events, pre-COVID, obviously. And she would come to these events, and she would rub elbows with our clients and our partners and with the other male executives. I was the only other female executive on the team. I should point that out. It was her and it was me, and then the rest of the executive team was men. But she would literally ignore me. And I would be at events where she would walk by, and she'd be with our other executives, and they would say hi to me, or they would stop and say something, and she would just keep walking and not even look at me. To the point that other partners and other attendees and clients would turn to me and go, wasn't that your CEO? Why didn't she talk to you? Right? So that's just a little bit embarrassing that your CEO is publicly snubbing you. She also would do a little bit of gaslighting. Right? A little bit of, no, you totally misunderstood my direction. And I would have an email where what she said is spelled out, and she would still say, no, that's not what I said. You misunderstood that. You're wrong. And she would do it in a way that made me feel like I must be stupid. I must have read this wrong, or I must have heard her wrong. And the way she always presented with, I was clearly the one at fault. I was clearly the dumb one in the room, and everything. If I just behaved better, then maybe she would behave, and maybe I wouldn't be so stupid or so caught flat-footed and everything. So that was my experience with having a boss who was a horrible bully. And I would love to hear in the comments if you guys have had the same experience, or how you're bullying the other women who have bullied you at work. Because it can be a boss, but it can be a peer. It can be an underling. Someone on your team can also be a bully and can bully you as well as bully their peers. But I'd love to hear what some of your experiences are. And I'm going to talk more about other ways that bullies show up. But this experience led me to make some pretty fast and pretty significant changes, because it happened at a point in my career where I'd already been doing marketing for 20 years. And I was like, you know what? I am too old for this, and I am done with this. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what I did and what my reactions were as we walk through some of these other steps. So Jackie says, this definitely sounds familiar, but I experienced much earlier in my career. Yeah, so earlier in my career, I experienced it and didn't fully recognize it for what it was, because part of my mindset was still that it must be me. I must actually be stupid. I must be doing something wrong. And I would get to a point where I'd be like, yeah, this person's definitely kind of a bully and a jerk. but not felt empowered to stand up for myself or necessarily to do anything about it. It was something that I felt like I just had to deal with. And we're going to talk about that too. So here are a few things I want you to know, though, about bullying in the workplace. 33% of workplace bullies are women. So while bullying, women as bullies is still in the minority, we're a third of them. We're a third of all bullies in the workplace. Women are a third of it. And as women, right, we have this reputation for being more collaborative and more connected and more emotional, and therefore you wouldn't think bullying would be a tactic that we would use. But clearly, a third of us think it's okay. And I would say, and we'll talk about that in a minute, I would say it's that emotional connection and it's that collaborative nature that we've been raised with that actually makes us the more dangerous and the more insidious bullies than men can be. But here's the damaging part. Women who are bullies target other women 65% of the time or 66% of the time. More than half the time, we are picking other women as our targets. So this whole idea of sisterhood and women supporting women and women network in work environments, think about that. If 66% of the time women bullies are picking on other women, how safe are those environments? How much do other women feel like they're actually supported by their peers or their bosses or female leadership when that is the dynamic? So in relation to this, while women target other women over 60% of the time, men only target women about 40% of the time. So it's significantly less that men actually bully other women or bully women. 65% of bullying is top down. It's the boss bullying down the food chain. 21% of bullying is peer to peer. You're getting it from someone on your team or somebody who's equal level to you. 46% of those who bully, who are bullies, are in management. And that just goes to the top-down metric too, right? But they have actual management executive level titles. 44% are in non-management, but they are still bullying people who rank underneath them at any rate in the corporate food chain. 43% of people today, so the study that I'm getting these numbers from is a 2021 study. They just did it back in February. 43% of workers today feel like they are still being bullied remotely. So bullying tactics are not an in-office function. I mean, you can bully people on text, right? You can bully people over Zoom, clearly. So it's still happening. Here's the insidious part. Women are known for using what they call quiet bullying tactics. So quiet bullies are the bullies who use the what they call a relational and social aggression, which to me simply says they use relationships and passive aggressive. And as women, we have tons of experience with people who are passive aggressive because either we do it ourselves, and all of us do at some point. All of us pull a passive aggressive move at some point. But there are plenty of women we know who this is their mode of communication. And it can be very hard to defend yourself and stand up against that, right? Christine, remember frameworks? She wanted me. It does, Christine. She wanted, yeah, she did want you to serve drinks at the company party. That totally counts. Because what is that? That's a woman in a position of power putting a woman subordinate in an uncomfortable position. In a position that honestly isn't appropriate. First, it wasn't appropriate at all. And doesn't match the role that you were paid to do, isn't appropriate for the situation, and was trying to put you in a lower position where you were serving everyone else at the company. How stupid was that? Clearly, Christine and I used to work together. So yeah, that's exactly. And she was a boss who was a bully. She absolutely was. She bullied the men and the women, but she was hardest on us women, that's for sure. So yeah, there's another bully early in my career, right? And yours. So the quiet bullies, here are some things that quiet bullies do. So you may not have thought about this if you've thought about people who have bullied you in the past. Women bullies in particular, who are these quiet bullies, they plant the seeds of rumors and false information, right? They plant the seeds of doubt about how capable that person is or what's going on in their personal life that's affecting their performance, right? They spread that. They do the 1-2 punch, right? They come in with a compliment, and then they dial it back with a deficit. You know, you were actually pretty good at that presentation. It's too bad your slides were so terrible, right? In this way where it's almost like they're complimenting you, but then they're pulling it back and making it seem that making you feel like, oh, actually you did fail after all, though. Such a pity. They use others to lodge complaints against you, right? So they won't go to HR, or they won't go to the boss and say, Natalie did this thing, or Natalie's this way, but they will encourage oh, you should really tell our boss about that. You should really go to management about that. They will encourage others to do that, basically on their behalf. Sue said she's often told you need to be a team player and do whatever it takes. Yeah, that's a message we get all the time, right? Because then, and that's almost that 1-2 punch, right? The implication is if you don't do whatever it takes, you're not a team player, therefore you're not a good person. That's the correlation we make. What my boss used to do that I just talked about, demonstrating apparent care. She cares about me. She's concerned about my move. And then taking advantage of trust to embarrass or humiliate. So this happens. My boss did this, but this happens a lot with peers. You confide in a peer. Oh my God, I totally screwed this up, but I was able to do this and this, and I covered my tracks, and so we're all good. Thank God we're all good. And then that peer will let drop accidentally. Oh, but she messed that up. Oh, whoops, was I not supposed to say? Well, she fixed it, so it's okay. Right? They use the information that you share with them against you, essentially. And then it's under the guise of, I'm your friend, of, oops, I accidentally let that slip. Or, oh, I didn't know that was confidential. When it's from above, sometimes it's feedback that's given to you in the form of mentorship. Right? Oh, well, you need to know how to handle situations like these. Gaslighting is a common one that bullies use, right? The whole you misunderstood, you didn't read it properly, you should have done this, you should have known better. Refusal to engage, right? Avoiding, ignoring, shunning, ostracizing, right? That's part of this planting rumors, and then completely, Heisman move, completely ostracizing you from the group. Moving goalposts, changing your goals, changing what you're supposed to be doing, or what's going to make you successful, or what you're accountable for, so that every time you're getting close to reaching success, the benchmark moves. How can you ever be successful? Because according to your boss or according to your peer, you're never quite reaching that goal. So those are some of the things that women do that are more, well, bullies do, quiet bullies do, but mostly women do, that are more insidious than just that direct to your face, being mean, being rude, being demeaning that happens. Karen, hey Karen, it's good to see you. Had that happen with others and then found out it was someone putting them up to it. Yeah, and that's the thing, right? So that person is a step removed, so they're protected. They're never directly involved in whatever the scandal is brewing now, or the rumor that's going on. So here's what happens in work environments where this is prevalent, right? And I worked at one. So as I shared with you, my bullying boss, this latest one that I talked about, she definitely demonstrated concern and then kind of pulled the rug out from under me. She was all about gaslighting. She was all about the more direct too. Very rude in meetings, very confrontational, totally moving my goalposts, and then very blatantly avoiding me and ignoring me in public settings. So it creates an environment, though, if you're working in a culture where this happens, especially when it's happening from the top, it creates an environment where two things happen. One thing is that other leaders try to emulate this behavior because this is how you're successful in this environment. So you end up with a team full of bullies who are using their authority and using their influence to shove things through, to make things happen, to help, and they think they're being productive because this is the model of leadership that's in front of them. So some of them consciously and some of them unconsciously are picking up these bullying habits because this is how you lead. This is how you get things done. The other thing that happens, though, is that people leave, right? People leave the culture. At the place where I worked, people left, and I was one of them. With that particular CEO, Her entire management team turned over within the first year. So not a surprise, because you start looking at how long do you put up with this behavior. And if you're an experienced leadership team, I'd already been around for over 20 years. The rest of the leadership team had also had been around. We were all middle-aged, okay? We were all old. And we were old enough to know your work environment doesn't have to be this way. You do not have to work like this. You do not have to work with people like this. So we made different choices. A lot of times when this happens, though, especially when it's a woman leader, when people leave, if it's other women leaving, right, women bullying other women, if it's other women leaving, a lot of times the broader executive team looks at that and chalks it up to catfights and just women having power struggles and personality clashes. And the woman leader, right, the woman who's in power, can absolutely frame it that way to the rest of the leadership team. Well, these women are leaving my team because they didn't get along with me. They didn't know how to drive things forward, right? She tells that story. This has the result of diminishing a woman's experience, right? Of diminishing her sense of support, and that the culture and that the environment is supportive of her. And it emboldens the bully, right? It helps the bully go, I can be successful here because look, even though all these women left, I'm still here and I'm still in charge. It validates her behavior as opposed to supporting the victims of the bullying who are saying, this is a hostile work environment, I can't be here. So what do we do? And I would love to hear from you guys, because clearly you've all had experience in women bullying women, and I'm sure you've observed it as well as been part of it. What do you do? It's not an easy situation. There's no clean fix for this. So there's a couple things I want to talk about. There's the in the moment, what do you do? And then there's the bigger picture, longer term, what are you going to do? In the moment, there are two tactics that I use depending on the type of bullying that's going on that have worked for me. And with this particular boss, especially because she was so aggressive in meetings, like in public settings, she wanted me to be embarrassed. So she would pick at things and find things, and just, again, she'd pull out that I'm the CEO card, so do what I want message. The best reaction in those public settings in particular with her, but really just in general with her, was I said nothing. That's really hard to do, because when we're being bullied, we get triggered, right? The minute somebody tells you that you're stupid, that you're not listening, that you're not good enough, right? What happens? Our gremlin, our imposter voice gets triggered, and we're like, holy cow, I am not good enough, and I am stupid. And we get into a flutter, right? We get into a frenzy, and we don't think straight. So once I started realizing what was happening with her, and that I was in a situation where I was with a very hostile boss, I was able to start putting that in place and realizing I can't respond to her, because defending myself, trying to explain what was really going on, trying to explain the situation, right? Building up my defense of why I did this and what the explanations were, all that did was give her more ammunition, more things to start picking apart. So what I learned was that most of the time I said absolutely nothing. If she started blustering about something on a slide that didn't make sense to her, or why didn't I run that ad that she wanted me to run, or anything, I literally let there be minutes of uncomfortable silence. And I had to sit there myself breathing. Again, this was pre-COVID, some of these meetings were in person and some of them were online because everybody traveled. But it didn't matter. In either case, I had to learn how to breathe and be silent and let her bluster. If there was something I actually needed to answer, you stick to the facts. You do not embellish, you do not add explanation, you stick to the facts. So when she blustered on me about an ad campaign, and there was a certain ad she wanted to run, and it was not part of the ad strategy, which we had discussed. And she was all upset in this meeting because she was the CEO and she asked for this ad, and why didn't I run it? I let there be a minute or two, probably 2 minutes, it was a long time, of uncomfortable just silence, and the rest of the executive team is sitting around just staring at us and watching. And we're kind of having a stare down, like she's staring at me, and then she's looking away, and then she's walking around the table a little bit, and then finally she goes, well, why isn't this run? And I said, We agreed in the meeting Tuesday night that that was not part of the strategy. Period. No longer explanation, no but you agreed and you said, none of that defense. Simple statement of, this is what we agreed, this is when we agreed to it, those are the facts. You want to avoid giving excuses, over explaining, or defending yourself, because that puts you in the position of needing to be defended. And you don't. When it's a bully who's picking on you, they are literally just looking for ways to make you feel powerless and to make them feel powerful. So if you can just, and I literally sat on calls, I didn't do this in a room with her. I've been uncomfortable and silent with her for a couple of minutes, but there was a call that I sat on with her where I literally just didn't respond at all. And after about 3 minutes or so, she finally said, okay, well, we're just moving on. Which is all I needed. Now, here's the thing. When you hear that situation, does it make me look weak? Does it make me look disengaged? Does it make me look like I'm in the wrong when I'm silent? It doesn't. Because all I was doing was letting her have the stage for all of her bullying blustering. Everyone else on the call, everyone else in the room can watch how she's behaving, but I'm not going to react to that. I'm not going to let myself be sucked into this ridiculous little drama where she gets to feel powerful and I am demeaned. When one, not only do I not deserve that, but two, she's wrong. She's just flat out wrong. And there's no benefit to that. There's no benefit to engaging in that energy, that negative bullying energy. There is zero benefit to you for engaging in that. So silence, honestly, is your best defense. And if you have to respond, you stick to just the facts. And you don't apologize. Oh, I'm sorry. I know you wanted that, but we agreed. No. There's no apology. There's nothing to apologize for. If you apologize, you're acknowledging that maybe they were right, that you did something wrong, that again, you're in that lesser position of power. It doesn't matter if the person is your boss, the CEO, it doesn't matter who they are. The power struggle is not about title at that point. It is about somebody trying to make you feel less than. Now, when I'm dealing with passive-aggressive types, right, so rather than the direct attack, which this last boss of mine was 2 bosses ago, was very good at, right? The direct attacks in meetings. When it was the more passive aggressive, well, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but that's a classic phrase for, but you're going to do it anyway, right? I don't mean to be rude, but I'm about to say something rude, right? So when it's the more passive aggressive, underhanded statement that they make, which is insulting or which is critical, which immediately, right, sends your spidey senses tingling and puts you on the defense. The best response to that is to put them on the spot. And you can do that perfectly, professionally and sweetly and nicely and still make a point. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? I'm not sure I understand you. How exactly? Could you explain that to me? How exactly is that true? Oftentimes just repeat back what they said. So if I understand you, what you're saying to me is that you're better looking than I am? I just want to make sure I understand. Make it a clarifying statement. And again, remove the emotion out of it. You don't have to be angry. You don't have to be resentful. But if you can just very clearly put the onus back on them to explain what they mean by that statement, which is clearly a rude statement, it puts them on the defense. Now, a couple things happen when somebody who is passive-aggressive is on the defense. One reaction is they back off. Oh, I didn't mean it, I was kidding. Or, oh, you misunderstood me, right? They backpedal. Fine, diffuses the situation. The other common response is, don't be so sensitive, or I was just kidding. Okay. Also diffuses the situation, because at that point you can say, you can let it go, or you can say, didn't realize you were kidding, I didn't think it was funny. You can set a boundary. So when you're dealing with the aggressive bully who's in your face, I recommend, again, we really don't want to engage with either bully. We're trying to diffuse and neutralize the situation. When you're with an aggressive bully, you say nothing, or you say only a fact that directly answers a question. period. No apologies, no explanations, no excuses. When you're dealing with the passive-aggressive bully, you can choose to ignore it, but that's not going to do anything to diffuse or change the behavior. And you may never change the behavior of the passive-aggressive bully, but if you want to feel like you stood your ground, then you need to flip it back to them. You need to put it back on them and say, explain what you mean by that. Now, both of those situations allow the bully's reaction to speak for themselves. That is what shows everyone else in the room, if there's an audience, who that person really is and how they really show up. So for in the moment, those are my two recommendations. For the longer term process, if you're at a job where you're dealing with a bully, I wish I could say there were great options for you, because truthfully, they're not. Most work environments, it's really hard to successfully deal with bullying management in particular, but it's hard to deal with a bully. Nobody wants to, and you can't blame them. Nobody wants to deal with a bully. And it can be hard to document, and it can be hard to prove if there's not an audience, if you don't have a bully who is like mine was very overtly aggressive, if you have one who's more of the quieter bullies, it can be hard to document and prove that you do in fact feel unsafe, unwelcome, or like this is a hostile environment. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it though. It doesn't mean you shouldn't go through the process, because in that kind of environment, something has to change, because you're either going to be so worn down and so unhappy at work that you're not going to be performing well, you're not going to love your job, and we spend an awful lot of time at our jobs to not at least like them a little bit. It's going to affect your performance, it's going to affect everything. It's going to affect your energy, your attitude, which is then going to affect your home life. That's inevitable. If we are not happy with what we are doing for 8 to 10 hours a day, we are not happy the rest of our day. That energy bleeds over, for sure. So if the environment doesn't change, if the people don't change, then you have to make a change. And your option is to accept that this is what it is and agree that this is how you're going to navigate it, and let go of the angst that comes with dealing with a bully. Like literally let go of it, which is hard to do, but people manage. Or you leave. If the work environment and the bully isn't going to change, then you leave. And I know for some people leaving feels like it's not an option. And maybe it's not an option right now, in which case getting yourself to a mindset where you understand this is where the bully's coming from, here are the tactics I'm going to use to deal with them, but emotionally knowing who they are and where they're at, I'm letting that go. This is because it's not personal. Bullies don't pick their victims based on a true personal dislike. They pick it based on power. They picked their victims based on who can I control and manage, because control of others is what makes them feel powerful, right? Making others feel less than is what makes them feel greater than. So, hey Jackie, I'm glad this is all making sense. So here's the thing I wanted to say about documenting the process. Pay attention. You have to write down what happened. What information were you given? What were your expectations? How did the situation differ from the information you were given and from your expectations? How did you react? How is this situation affecting you? Who else is involved? Who else knows? Is there anyone? You need to document all of those things. In documenting it, you need to share it. Somebody else needs to know. This is what's happening. Here's what's going on. So go to your HR department, go to your supervisor, depending on how your organization is set up, but you need to go to someone else who can help you, or who at least is supposed to help you. If nothing else, you need it documented, even if the company's not going to do anything about it. You want to show that you have followed a process and made a good faith effort to make a change. Now, with the boss that I had, here's the thing, the bullying boss, I figured out in the first 30 days, like that's how fast in the first 30 days she went to from girlfriend to bully. In the next 30 days, I called HR and now I take that back. In the next 30 days, I thought, can I change this? I actually went through, and I had conversations with my coach, and I had conversations with other coworkers and other members of the executive team of how do we deal with her? How do we manage this? And I did the whole, what can I do? How do I show up differently? How am I a different leader to work with her management style? Didn't work. So by the time I was 90 days in this job, I was like, this isn't going to work. I can't work for somebody who's behaving this way because I can't be successful here. That's when, between 60 and 90 days, is when I called HR and I called the investment firm that owned our company because they were her boss. And I reported everything. I reported that I thought she was a bully. I reported that she singled me out because I was the only female on the team. I was the only one she bullied this way. She bullied the other men, but she didn't do it publicly the way she did with me. And here's how I got my validation. After every one of those executive meetings where she was berating me for doing something wrong or another thing wrong, after every one of those meetings, we'd get off the phone or we'd walk out of the meeting room and my phone would blow up with text messages and phone calls and emails from every other man in that room going, you know, we think you're doing a great job, right? You hang in there. They would call me late at night and go, so let's talk about how you can work with her, and try to offer me advice and strategies for how to work with her better. They all knew it was going on. Every executive in that room, not one of them did not at some point reach out to me to make a comment and to offer support. But never public support in the room when it was happening. Isn't that funny? It's not funny. That is common, right? It's very hard to stand up to a bully. And if nobody else is going to do it first, nobody wants to get in trouble, nobody wants to lose their job, right? So everybody stays quiet. So I did the step of documenting everything. I called her bosses at the investment firm, and I called HR, and I reported everything that I had recorded. And I gave my proof because other people did witness, and I said, you can talk to them. Here's what's interesting. The investment firm told me I was the third executive to complain about her as a bully. The third. And I said, if I'm the third, then I need to know what you're going to do about it. And their response was, hang in there. We're working on it. That was in December. That was in November. And by January, I had another job. In total, I stayed at this job 6 months, because none of us should have to put up with a bully. So documentation is your first piece if you're going to go through the process, right? If you're going to follow a process, and I recommend that you do, like I said, regardless of the outcome. Step 2 in this, keep in perspective. This is a real problem. You are being bullied. If you can document what's happening when the moving of the goalposts, what your perspective was, what was the real situation, especially if you have people who have observed, you are not to blame for being bullied. When somebody treats you in a disrespectful and demeaning fashion, that is not your fault. There is not some other way you should be behaving to get them to behave better. It's not how that works. So you need to remind yourself that you're dealing with a real situation and find coping strategies that help you deal with the stress, because it's stressful. It is stressful to get text messages at 10 o'clock at night telling you all the things you've done wrong, which I got those. Wanting you to fix it right away. What am I going to do at 10 o'clock at night? I can't call the client. They're in bed, right? So you want to find ways to take care of yourself when you're going through this, because that's going to help you keep that mindset to remind yourself that this is not your fault, and this is not, you're not to blame. There's not something around you that has to change to make this work. Ask for a formal investigation. If you're going to document it and you're going to go to HR, ask for it. You're not always going to get the follow-through that you're looking for, but you should ask for the formal investigation. You should look for, if you think it will help, a mediated conversation, a facilitated conversation to see if you can deal with this directly. You should see if you can find a path for, maybe if it's your direct boss, that's a little bit harder, but if it's not, if it's somebody in another group or a peer, how do you remove yourself from having to deal with them, or at least minimize contact from them? HR or your boss or your supervisor should be your partner in this process, unless, of course, they're the ones who's the bully. In which case, documenting and reporting is still important, even if those teams aren't going to help you, because, again, you're going to want to show that you've done everything you could to fix the situation. Now, if you've gone through the documentation, you've gone through the HR process, it's not changing, the person isn't leaving, or the person isn't changing their behavior, or the work environment isn't helping, then there's the option to leave. And that is always an option. It may take time, right? Finding a new job, finding something that's going to support you the way that you want it to, finding a new environment that feels healthier is also going to take time. But that's why having the strategies for understanding not your fault, coping with the stress, and accepting, if you're going to be there for a few months while you look for a new job, accepting that this is what I'm working in, so this is how I'm going to deal with that person, so that I'm not taking it personally, so that I'm not dragging this terrible energy home with me at night and being a grump with my kids and my partner and all of that. So keep in mind too, when you do leave and when you do end up in the new work environment, that you're probably going to have a little bit of work PTSD, because we do. Especially if it's been long term. If you've been working in a negative environment for such a long time, we all end up with PTSD. We forget that not everybody responds the same way, and that healthy work environments look a little bit different and work a little bit different, and our reactions might be the negative one initially. So keeping your eye on how you show up at your new job to ensure that you're not responding in that PTSD trauma way, mindset, to something that's actually a genuinely healthy and normal work environment, right? That's work that we have to do, because I've said this before in our trainings, I will say it again, our work, our careers, and those relationships are just like our personal relationships. They are relationships. We spend an awful lot of time and energy in our jobs. It's a relationship with the company, with the people in the company. When we leave, it's a breakup. It's a divorce. It can be messy. It can be ugly. And there is emotional baggage that comes with that. So if you're leaving a toxic environment, especially if you've been there for a long time, be prepared to need a little time to heal from that perspective as you go into your new environment. Treat the new work as a new relationship. We so proactively try to, I'm in a new relationship with this new person, I'm not going to bring that old baggage from that old ex-boyfriend who was a jerk with me, and then we have to consciously work at it, because sometimes we catch ourselves and we know we're doing it. It's the same thing with your careers. It's the same thing when you change jobs. Watch for the old baggage. Keep a new and open perspective with your new job. So I know I went really long, guys, and I'm sorry. This is a huge topic for me, obviously. I've had a lot of experience with women bullies. And it was very impactful to me and my career and my perception of women in business and in corporate. And it was one of the reasons that I got very, very focused on Dirty Girls Consulting and this group that we have, Accelerating Leadership for Professional Women, because truthfully, there's no reason for it. The more women that are coming up in the ranks, right, climbing the corporate ladder, in the executive roles, running their own businesses, the more we should be supportive and collaborative and helping each other. Because success and happiness and joy and confidence and all of that goodness, there's no limit on it. There's no, I've had enough, and if I take any more, I'm taking away from someone else. That's not a thing. So there's no reason why we can't share with everyone else, right? With all of the other women who are out there trying to achieve their goals and trying to get that job or get that raise. Their promotion doesn't take away from yours. Somebody else's raise or making a ton of money doesn't take away from your ability to make more money. We should definitely be supporting each other way more than we do in corporate environments. Women should not be bullying other women 65% of the time. That is not an acceptable number. So I'm going to wrap it up there because I went through a bunch of stuff. I want to thank you guys tonight for joining me, and I just want to add, for those of you who have been part of this community and know, I started Dirty Girls Consulting. I started this coaching business specifically to help women and girls achieve their goals, achieve their dreams, to get further ahead faster on what it is they want to do, because with a bully in the workplace. I invite you to a free conversation. I call it the Dirty Girl Mini Dig. It's a 15-minute conversation. It is free. I'm not selling you anything in that conversation. We're talking just about what you're dealing with right now. Whether it's a bullying boss or a bullying peer, whether it's just figuring out your career goals, focusing on whether you're changing a job or not, whatever it is. Building up confidence, public speaking. But for 15 minutes, we're going to focus just on you. And in that 15 minutes, you can get a sense of what it's like to go through coaching, and you can get hopefully one step, not hopefully, this is what we're going to work towards, one action step that gets you closer to your goal. That is the whole focus of the call, to get you one step closer to getting to the goal that you want to achieve. So drop the word dig in the chat for the Dirty Girl Mini Dig. Drop the word dig in the chat, and I will reach out to you over, I'll send you a private message, and we'll connect on a time to have that free 15-minute chat. And ladies, thank you so much. It is great to see all of you. I'm so happy that you're here. Christine, Jill, Karen, Sue, Denise, hey, it's good to see you. Lovely to have you guys join me tonight. Truly appreciate it. Have a great Tuesday, and thanks for bearing with me on a very long training Tuesday tonight. I will see you next week, and I hope to see the word dig in the chat and have a conversation with you too.